everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on Blueforce manual timesheets. During our session today, like we do with all our sessions, everyone is muted on the phone today. So please ask all your questions via the GoToWebinar question area of the control panel. And we'll address those questions as we go through the different topics we're going to be covering today. Now, a common question I always get is there a copy of this presentation going to be available? So yes, after the presentation, this copy is available in a PDF format for you. I'm also doing a recording of this session, so that will also be available for your disposal. All right, so topics for today. Obviously, we are here to talk about the Blueforce manual timesheet, but breaking it up into smaller segments, we're going to first go through the review process, kind of go through just a quick overview of the Blueforce payroll process. We'll discuss what I'm referring to as a point of no return, and we'll go through the user expectations in Blueforce. So what is expected on a daily basis. After that, we're going to go through and discuss the handling of payroll adjustments, specifically how to create that manual timesheet and how to go and submit and approve that timesheet once it's done. And then we'll wrap up our conversation, or actually kind of going through as we're doing our discussion. We'll have some demos, and I'll actually go into Blueforce and show you how to create that manual timesheet. So let's get started. First, let's go into the just kind of a quick overview of the Blueforce payroll process. So kind of just a big picture overview, so everyone's understanding of what kind of happens on the back end, kind of what's happening in the system is initially the employee is going to punch in and punch out via one of the time collection methods, and obviously they have four ways of clocking in. Walter being the time clock, phone in being the phone system, the toll-free number the employee can call into. The mobile punch, which is a mobile app that's loaded onto smartphones. For some of you on this call, your employees are using that. And lastly, web punch. Web punch is just a way of punching into the system via a computer, kiosk, laptop, whatever it may be. As long as you have access to a website, you basically punch in and punch out. Now, with that also comes the supervisor and manager roles, which specifically are the editor and submitter. Those two roles actually review the punches on a daily basis. That is the most critical point, I think, of the whole payroll process, is that a supervisor or manager, once again, the editor and submitter roles, are actually reviewing their time on a daily basis. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. Managers, one of the managers, whether it be, one of the ones in the previous step, will review the time for the pay week and click on submit. So you have to be a submitter role in order to submit. And I just put a manager there. It could be different just depending on your site or location, but generally it's a manager that's in charge of that role. After which, typically someone in the admin function, maybe a local payroll person at the office, or maybe just a different manager, or sometimes even a general manager in some cases, are the approvers, and they actually will review the time one more time, kind of look it over, give it a once over, make sure it looks good, and then click on approve. Now that two-step submit and approve process actually is required for every timesheet we have in Blueforce. So there's no way around this. You have to submit and approve every timesheet. And it cannot be the same person. So that's one of the things we always encounter, is it needs to be two distinct people, two different people. And as I pointed there in blue, once you approve, you've basically told the system, I as the approver, sign off on this payroll and is ready to go for payroll processing. This is a point of no return, as I refer to it. Corporate at this point would take over that approved timesheet, approved payroll, and begin to export it over to JDE. We'll process the payroll, and then we'll also then fund the payroll, and then we start all over and do it again the next pay cycle. So that's kind of a brief overview. I think some of you have seen some flow charts and stuff with pictures in previous webinars, but this time I just want to keep it very simple, just go through the processes. All of you on this phone call should be aware of how everything is working and talking now in the system. Now, as I mentioned, this point of no return. Point of return basically says, as submitters and approvers, one of the key responsibilities here is we need to make sure that everything is correct in payroll before we go and submit as submitters and approve as an approver. Your responsibility here is to make sure that all hours are accounted for, as well as to ensure that the employee is punching in and out on a daily basis. If those things are happening, we will not have any issues. We probably won't have a need for this discussion today on this phone call. But that is the key thing. We need to make sure as submitters and approvers that you're making sure everything is correct and in the system before finalizing payroll. I think more times than not, we're just going in the system. I'm saying we're kind of an open term. Not everyone's doing this, but kind of as a group here, we'll say, we're just going in there and hitting a submit and approve just to suffice or check off the list, check off the item off the list. And we need to pay a little bit more attention to the times that we're actually going and actually submitting and approving for. Now, once the approvers approve, the export process will kick in. So at this point, it becomes very difficult to retract. Now, there is some time in there that could say, you know, if approver accidentally approved something and didn't mean to, there might be some time in there for either myself or Tiandra to jump into action and see if we can pull it out. But in all technicalities there, once you approve, you've kick off the export process. So once it's initiated, the export process will send that payroll over to JDE for processing. And then any missed time at that point forward will need to be treated as a manual timesheet. So if we forgot something, we're in a rush, just click on approved and say we're done, and we really weren't, all that missed time is going to have to be treated as a manual timesheet. All right, so that's kind of just a quick overview of the general process of Blueforce, the payroll, and kind of how we're using it on a day-to-day basis. Now, to go on to a topic about expectations now. What are the expectations for the Blueforce users? Blueforce users in this case, specifically referring to, are your submitters, approvers, those that are in the system to actually do the work as far as reviewing, do the work as far as going in there and making sure that we have no missed punches, and so forth. Okay, so kind of going through that. So daily review of time cards is the first thing that's the top of the list for your daily expectations. So as a editor in the system, as a submitter in the system, even approvers, it doesn't hurt to kind of help out or push back on the submitters and editors that they need to be doing a daily review of their time cards. And what this basically means is you're checking for missed punches. Now, every time I bring up this topic of daily review, I get a question about, first off, I don't work 7 days a week, and we understand that you don't work 7 days a week. But we do ask that when you are at the job site or in the office, make sure you are reviewing your time cards for those exceptions. Open punches, punches don't pair up, issues with employees not punching in correctly using the Walter or calling from an unauthorized phone number from the phone in, stuff like that. Just the basic items to correct the punches. Now, with that, punch approvals, which are those scenarios where employees punched in from the wrong phone number or had a finger issue with a fingerprint on the Walter devices, and corrections I mentioned have to be made by 2 p.m. Central Time with a recap that is emailed to all submitters at 3 p.m. daily. So if you ever get that report and you see some open punches or references to issues you had, that is because those were not done in a timely manner as noted here on the system. Notice on this particular slide, I'm sorry. Clock sites, punch approvals and corrections must be made on the Walter device. What that basically means is those sites supervisors, leads, managers, project managers, whatever the different titles we have for those positions, all of them are set up as reviewers at the local site and can actually do the punch approvals and corrections right from the Walter device itself. You don't need to go into Blueforce. You don't need a computer to do this. They can do it straight from the Walter device itself. But editors and submitters will only be able to do that from the computer if it's available on the site. Now, non-clock sites, if you don't have a clock, you have a Walter, you have mobile, you have a web punch, those punch approvals and corrections can be made directly into Blueforce. So those users can just clock in straight to Blueforce and take care of those changes. And one little thing I always like to put out here is if daily reviews are occurring, as we have been stressing for now almost a year now, doing the daily reviews, there should be no reason to have a manual timesheet created. And I'll stress that if we're doing the daily reviews on a consistent basis and you're making sure that everything is in there, it makes it very difficult for us to miss any time when it comes time to payroll. Now, I will say there's a few of you out there that are 100% every time, never have to do a manual timesheet, and we're like, hats off to you guys. You never have an issue. The whole staff, the whole team has come together and has done excellent on the daily reviews. Now, there are some that every payroll we have 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 50 manual timesheets, and those are the locations that we need to make sure daily reviews are occurring. We get the whole team involved. So how do I handle payroll adjustments? Okay, so let's say you've got some type of payroll issue where you missed hours, and now we need to take care of them. So how am I supposed to do this? So one of the key things here is this new item, and I call it new. It was released back in August of this past year, but it is called a manual timesheet. A manual timesheet is really how you're going to take care of any adjustments for pay periods that have already been closed, essentially approved and exported over to JDE. So a manual timesheet, that is the big thing, the big topic for today is how do I handle these payroll adjustments? So all adjustments will be handled through Blueforce using this manual timesheet process, and this basically includes all of your interim check situations, unpaid hours. Now, these situations are handled separately from your regular timesheet. So here in a little bit, when I go into Blueforce and some of the slides I have coming up, I'm going to show you those screens so you can see where the regular timesheet is and where your manual timesheet is located. And manuals are never going to be mixed in with those regular timesheets. So you're going to have a manual timesheet in its own little area, totally distinct from everything else in the system. And then once you go in there, you will have the ability as a Blueforce user in here, as a submitter or an approver, to go in there and enter your payroll adjustments in this manual timesheet for up to the last 2 prior pay periods. Now, once that's done and you realize that you go in there and you have something that extends greater than 2 periods out, then this is going to require some additional assistance from your corporate payroll contact. At that point, you can get them involved for assistance with that entry. And that's really the only time I'll encourage you to contact corporate payroll during this phone call, and I'll explain this here as we go through this. So as we go through here, you'll see it says how to handle a payroll adjustment. So if there was a payroll adjustment for the current pay period, okay, and payroll has not been approved yet, so in those cases, you're going to do is just go in there. There's no need to create a new manual timesheet. You're just going to go in there and enter the hours in the actual current period that's open, and it's waiting to be submitted and approved. Once again, if the period is not closed and you need to enter hours for that same period, go into the regular timesheet and enter those scenarios. There's no need for a manual timesheet. One of the things to keep in mind is, like I mentioned a while ago, the regular timesheets and the manual timesheets are in 2 different areas. So it's putting more work on you, for one, to go and create that manual timesheet. But more importantly, when it comes to processing it on the corporate side, it becomes a little adventurous, I guess you should say, because we have to go hunting for these manual timesheets. So one of the examples I have here is that the current open period is January 2nd to January the 8th, and the employees have 16 hours of vacation that are due to them for the January the 4th and the 5th. There's no reason why you can't just go into the regular timesheet, enter those hours into the open period. Now, furthermore with this, as we go on the flip side, if it's a prior period in which payroll has already been approved and essentially closed, in those situations, then it is permissible to go ahead and create a manual timesheet. So the example here, close period is January 2nd through the 8th. Those same vacation hours are due on the 4th and 5th. In that case, I'd go in, create a manual timesheet. And once again, this is the only way to pay an employee for those hours due. So if you're going in there and you need hours, you missed hours, the only way to pay them is to go into and create a manual timesheet. Once again, do not contact your corporate payroll contact. Do not contact any member of the IT team. You have to go in the system and create a manual timesheet. There's no kind of way around that. And the last part of this, just to keep in mind, a couple months back, we all had our JD security adjusted accordingly, in which it no longer allowed for time entry. So what happened with that is obviously all time entry is not restricted. You can't just go in there and key in time to JD Edwards. So that means the only way around that is to once again create a manual timesheet. And I'm stressing that over and over because that seems to be a topic that happens all too often, where every week we hear people around the country trying to circumvent the system. And unfortunately, the only way that employees can get paid in the system is by creating this manual timesheet. So once again, that's the only way. And once again, do not contact payroll for entering time, kind of a back-end way of doing it. So let me stop here. I think I've answered some of the questions that have popped in to my screen. Just give me 1 second. Okay, let's proceed. All right, so let's go into our next area, which is now to create that manual timesheet. So now we've got a kind of foundation, kind of a little overview of how we get to this point. Create a manual timesheet is not a difficult process. However, there are, like I said, two timesheets in the system. There's a regular timesheet, and then there is that good old manual timesheet. Okay. We here in our IT team really don't like the word manual. I know it's probably not the best word for this, but that is the term that EPAY has provided for us in there. So we call it a regular job timesheet or a manual timesheet, and they're represented in Blueforce, as you see here on the screen. This is kind of just a screenshot of what you would see when you go in to select from one of the timesheets. First and foremost, you're going to go to the Timesheets module of Blueforce, and then you're going to be prompted with the same menu on the screen. On the left-hand side, you have the option of picking Job Timesheets. It's there noted in red, and that is the regular timesheets. That's what normally pops up. That's where we normally go in and see on our screen when we go to this view. Or we can go to the bottom of the list and click on Manual Timesheet, which is denoted here in blue with that blue arrow. What that manual timesheet will do for us now, allow us to create these interim situations that we've been talking about. So that's the two ways of distinguishing the two. Now, unfortunately, if you go into the job timesheets, obviously, if you're entering for dates that are in the past, the job timesheets, the current pay period timesheets, will not allow for dates in the past. So you're going to be able to see that the reporting period is going to be noted on the screen, letting you know that you can't enter anything other than this particular date range. Now, the manual timesheets will allow you to go back, like I said, 2 pay periods and actually adjust as needed. So that's a quick way of determining which one, or if you're in the right section or not. And then once you actually click on each of those links, the view is going to be a little different for each as well. And I'll show you that as we go through today's call. But following the steps here, if I go into the manual timesheet view and actually click on manual timesheet, and once again, I'll demo this here live momentarily, but I'm going to go through some slides first. When I click on manual timesheet, it's going to take me right into this particular screen in which I have a couple key items that I need to fill out. So step one here is going to be select the job. You're going to tell the system, what job do I need to enter a manual timesheet for? Now, if an employee worked 3 different jobs and this employee didn't get paid for any of those jobs, then you're going to actually create 3 manual timesheets, 1 for each job. Secondly, you're going to enter the date range of the missed hours to be entered. So here in step 2 and 3, as noted here in the red circles, you basically tell the date range you want to create a timesheet for. So make sure the dates are correct and correspond to your pay period that you missed out on. Next, you're going to check mark, and it's number 4 there. You're going to check mark and show blank timesheets. Now, the way this works is if I leave that unchecked and you hit search, which is next step in step 5, you're going to pull up nothing on your screen. The reason we need this checked is because there is no timesheet right now currently created in the manual system for any of your jobs. However, when we go and force it to say show blank timesheets, it'll create a blank timesheet for us on the screen. And I'll show you that here shortly as well. Now, once you click search, you're going to go to the next view, which now allows you to now see all of the timesheets that are available for you that match that criteria. Now, if you look on the screen here, I know it's a little small and it's hard to see here, but you can quickly tell that when I did the search for the date range of January 2nd through January the 8th, it pulled up 2 timesheets for me that actually meet that criteria. The first one, that's got a little square around the dates in red, shows me that pay period ended on the 2nd. And then that one in the blue started on the 3rd and went to the 9th. My date range actually kind of encompass both of those timesheet date ranges. So that's the reason why you would see 2 on the screen. So at this particular step, one of the things you'll have to do is verify that the correct timesheet you need is on the screen, and you verify basically on the date range for the pay period. And then you're going to just basically click on the job link right there denoted with the red arrow and actually go in to that particular timesheet. And when you open that timesheet, it's going to take you over, and you're going to actually be able to now go and click on Add New. The timesheet comes over blank. There's no lines on that. You have to click on Add New to add a new row to begin entry. Now, once you've started your data entry, after clicking Add New here, you're going to be asked to enter a few more fields. First field is the work date. The work date being the day that was missed. Now, one of the criteria here, the date range, whatever date you put in here under work date, must be within the range of the pay period at the top of the screen. So one of the things you can see on this particular example, the work date is 12/29/15. Right above that, you have the pay period area. Pay period says it's 12/27 through 1/2. So if you were entering this manual timesheet, this particular work date would be valid because it's within that date range. Now, if you get a scenario where an employee missed time in this date range and then they missed time in the next range, was the 3rd through the 10th, we'll say, in that case, 3rd through the 9th, in that case, you're going to have to go in and create a separate manual timesheet for that different date range. So, bottom line, work dates it must be within that pay period date range that you're entering for. All right, step 2 would be now to select the job work. So you're just going to go in the drop down, pick that job that you want to code time to for this particular employee. Once again, this job should actually match the job selection at the very top of the screen that you already selected from the previous search criteria. Now, if there is like I said, this employee worked 3 different jobs. As I mentioned earlier, you'll have to create 3 different manual timesheets, each for those different jobs. Next, select your employee, and then fourth, you're going to go in and select the task that employee performed. So if he was a custodian, hit the drop-down, custodian will be available. The tasks that are going to be available on the drop-down will correspond to the job you selected in step 2. So if you pick a job that's, let's say for example, is a landscaping job, if I go over to task and I'm looking for a custodian, you're going to have an issue because landscaping tasks, there is not a landscaping task called custodian, and vice versa. So that would be something you have to keep in mind. The tasks come from the job that's currently selected. Step 5 is a work order. If you need to put a work order in, you have to code this time to allocate this time to a work order. Hit the drop down, pick the work order here. Now, the work orders that are available correspond to, once again, the job that you've selected. So if this job has no work orders, then you're not going to find anything available for you on that drop-down list. So it is important that you select the correct job on this step, on this particular line. Sorry. And then lastly, step 6 is enter the past pay date, or what it says pay period in parentheses. This is one that I do not like the terminology of what it looks like, because that's kind of the support team over at EPAY, or development team within EPAY, designed this field. Basically, as a good guide for everybody, if you go to this field, simply make this a start date of the pay period in which you missed the hours for. So in this case, the start of the pay period was 12/27. It's also noted here at the top of the screen, and that'll actually take you on through to the next step. So right off the bat, there's 6 fields there on a manual timesheet, and it must be entered to be successful here in this particular screen. Next, you have 3 more. This is just more a continuation, scrolling to the right of that same line. We come up to the regular rate type, which is typically what you would use, but nevertheless, you pick the rate type for the employee worked. If you miss vacation hours, and it's just something that needs to be done on this particular as a manual timesheet, you can go in there and drop down, hit the drop down and pick vacation, and so forth. One of the cool things about this manual timesheet is we've recently received an update from EPAY in which we can kind of segregate the regular timesheet from the regular timesheet rate types from the manual timesheet rate types. So you can go through here and notice that not every rate type will be available for you under manual timesheet, because there are some that have been deemed that should only be on the regular timesheet. And I didn't put a slide together for all the explanation on that part, but there are some rate types that will only be designated for manual timesheet use. So when you hit yours, go to your jobs and hit the drop down, you'll see those and understand kind of where I'm coming from on that particular topic. Step 8, you're going to go in and enter the total number of hours worked by the employee. So once again, we're looking at total hours. We're not looking at tracking lunch or anything else that may have occurred. What are the hours due to that employee for this job? Just put in the hours. If you worked 7 hours and actually took a lunch that day, put 6.5. And lastly, leave the pay rate field blank, as this pulls from the employee profile. So step 9 there, leave that field blank. The system, when you actually go in and save, which is coming up here, will go out to the employee profile and pull in the pay rate. The only time we should be going in here and putting in a pay rate is if the system, if for some reason the employee worked maybe a premium job that gets paid a different rate. Maybe he gets paid, $8.50 an hour, but for this one, for this job he performed today, he was going to get, for this missed time, was actually $11 an hour. In that case, you can go in there and key in the $11 rate. Other than that, leave that field blank. There's no need to key in anything to that field. But those are the 9 fields that are required as part of the manual timesheet process of an entry. Now, furthermore, like I mentioned, the far left-hand side where we began the entire process here, there's actually a save field, a save link, that you'll actually click on when you're completely done with your line. Now, once you're done with that line for the manual timesheet, hit save. You'll get a confirmation message at the top of the screen that will say manual timesheet was added successfully. And at that point, you know that your work is saved and you can proceed on as needed to a bigger and better things as needed. Now, you have the opportunity now at this point to go in and continue entering additional manual timesheet lines as needed. And there is no limit, but as I put out there really is not going to be a need for this, because we're not going to be creating manual timesheets. We're going to correct the issues before they get to this point of having to create a manual timesheet. Now, like I said, you have the opportunity of entering more lines, or if you need to edit the existing line you created, maybe you put the wrong number of hours, you put them on the wrong day, whatever it may be, you can always come back and click on Edit. Edit will allow you to go in and edit that line you created. Or if you find out that the employee really wasn't wasn't due those hours, you just want to get rid of that line, you can also go in there and hit delete, and it'll delete the work we just did. So all those little links are right there, all coupled together side by side, or obviously add new, like I said, to add more lines. They're all coupled right there together. That so a real convenient section where you can just go in there and click what you need and to proceed. Now I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to go ahead and just take a minute, and we're going to demo the entering of those missing hours into Blueforce. And then once we're done there, we're going to come back out and I'll show you what to go do next. So give me 1 second. Let me go ahead and I have some questions that popped up. One question before I go in there says, do I do this also for vacation pay? If it's vacation pay that's due, that's truly done in a previous pay period, yeah, you can come in here and do it as vacation pay. You can enter that back vacation pay. If it's vacation pay for the current period, there's no reason to do the manual timesheet. You can go into the regular timesheet view and go ahead and enter that vacation pay like you would do like normal other time that's sitting out there to be processed. So that was a very good question. All right, so let me go back. Let me log out of here and actually go back into Blueforce. All right, so I'm logging in here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, here we go. All right, so I am in Blueforce, and when you log in, you're going to see a similar view with all these different icons and whatnot. One of the things to create a manual timesheet, you have to go into the Timesheets module, which is located right here in the middle of the screen. Now, once you're in the Timesheets view, from there, since you've just logged into Blueforce, the first thing that Blueforce will ask you to do, obviously, as I've said in other webinars, you've heard me say this many times, when I click on one of the icons here to go into one of the modules, the first thing the system does, it tells me pick a job. Basically, what job or jobs do I want to work with? Okay. The first thing I'll tell you is right here at the very top of the grid, you have a listing, or actually a total number of activated records. In my case, it's over 1,200 records. Many of you may have 1 or 2 jobs, and that's perfectly fine. So for you to have a couple hundred jobs, just depending on your area of responsibility or area of access. Now, you can pick one job off the list and be fine, or you can pick all of them and you work with all of them. One thing I mentioned on the webinars yesterday, I mentioned on this particular screen, if you look at some of the job names or the job name column, the ones on when you log in as well, the first ones all appear at the top of the list with a plus sign. The way the system works here, it groups all of your jobs, all of your groupings of jobs at the very top of the list. That's what the plus sign means. That means you can those are collapsible or expandable groupings. So the one I have currently selected, let's say this one's called 1-HOU for Houston, Greens Point 6. That means that the Greens Point 6, there's probably multiple jobs at that site. So there's a grouping that's put together for that. If I scroll down a little bit, and I'm going to erase my arrow here, and if I scroll down just a tad, I'm at the very bottom of the list here, I have districts that appear the same way with a plus sign. These are my district groupings. So in this case, as you see 10401. 10401 is a district number, but you may also see a plain 10401 without the plus sign. The difference of the two, there may or may not be a difference as far as what's available for you, but the difference is one is a grouping of jobs, the other one is the actual job itself. So job 10401, which is a district job, or 10401, which could be with the plus sign, is the grouping of that district with all the jobs underneath it. So don't fret if you ever see this on your screen. That plus sign is just letting you know that you have groupings available to be selected. So enough of that. But let's go back up here. I'm going to go actually pick up a grouping that I create for that I've created for our webinars, and it's just an IT group that I created out there. And whichever you choose to do, whichever way you decide to go on this, when you select your jobs, in my case, I selected a group. It had 5 jobs. Those 5 jobs are listed on the left-hand side of the screen here. So if you go down here on the left-hand side of the screen, you will see your jobs listed right there. Now, in saying that, once I've selected those jobs, if I choose to work with any jobs that are not selected, I need to go back in there and select them. If I don't, and I'm looking forward to coding time, or entering a manual timesheet for a job that's for an employee job that an employee worked, if it's not selected, bottom line, you're not going to be able to go back and use it, or for that manual timesheet example. In those cases, like I said, if you need to go and add that job to your selection criteria, you can actually go back, hit clear here. Clear will actually clear that selection, or simply hit select and go back and select more jobs. Okay. One of the things I mentioned for you at the very top of the screen here, you had a select all. I would recommend everyone on this phone call to use select all to work with all your jobs, so you don't have to worry about not selecting something. But to each their own. If you only want to work with one at a time, you're more than welcome to do that as well. But enough of that. We'll move on with the timesheets. So once you pick that job, it's going to take you over into our timesheets view. And the timesheet view here, once again, keep in mind, top of the window, you have job timesheets, which are your regular timesheets, and at the very bottom, you have your manual timesheets. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and erase my drawings. I'm actually going to click on manual timesheet. And then once I go into manual timesheet, the first things I need to do is to make sure that everything is all right on cue and kind of how I need it to show up, is I can go in here and specifically select a job that I want to work with. Okay, so that first screen, the drop down is going to show you the same job that you were just currently selected. In this case, I have, I'm going to go ahead and select that 105 Alamo Cafe job. From there, the next step is go over here to the date from. The employee and the timesheet status, leave alone for now. We're going to leave those alone. We're going to go over to the date from. We're going to go and pick the date from a previous period. I'm going to use the 2nd through the 8th. And I purposely, well, first off, I know we're not going to get more timesheets returning to me than what I'm expecting, because I'm using the Saturday to Friday date, but the test example that I use, I purposely have it on a different pay cycle. So it's going to show me a little different results. Mine's going to be on a Saturday through Sunday cycle. So at this point, the next step is to come in here and click on Show Blank Timesheets. And then I hit Search. Now, what Search is going to do is going to show me up all the different timesheets. In this case, I have 3 that match that criteria. So once again, let's review the criteria we told the system. We said we wanted a timesheet that matched, was within this date range. Okay? So when I say within that date range, what basically means that even if one date is within that date range, it's going to pop up. So like this one ended on the 2nd. I said from the 2nd, so that matches. This one basically is from the 3rd to the 9th, so that kind of matches. And then lastly, I have a different one here that matches its bi-weekly period, and that one also matches. So one of the things you need to keep in mind is some of your jobs, depending on the employees that are set up to work those jobs as well, may have multiple timesheets available for you to enter to. And that is all because of the different pay groups that are available. Okay, so in this case, I have someone, one of the employees I have set up for this job can work under this particular pay group. I have others working on this other pay group. So just keep that in mind as part of your selection when you go in there and try to decide which timesheet you need to use. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Now, furthermore with that, when you go and assign employees, if you were to pick the wrong timesheet here for the wrong pay group, and you try to go assign employees to that timesheet as you go through that, you will have some difficulties. Your employees will not be able to be found when you do that manual timesheet. So just keep that in mind as well. So this is hard to mess up, but I want to bring this different scenarios that you might encounter. Now, mine's happening this way because from a testing perspective, I have employees for this job that work both pay groups that are available. So in this one, we're going to pick that first pay group. We're going to say we're going to enter time for let's say the 29th of December. It's a good date. On the 29th of December is the day we're going to enter the manual timesheet that we missed. So in that case, I'm going to go ahead and click on the job link for that particular line. It'll take me into the manual timesheet view. And the next step I have to do here is now click on Add New. Now, Add New is a little hidden. It's right here, circled in the green. That Add New is where we're going to go now to actually proceed with adding a new manual timesheet. Now, as we do that, the Add New only affects the job that we're currently working with. So keep in mind, the job that we're working with is right up here in the green arrow. It says Job 105 Alamo Cafe. So one of the answers to this test, as you enter this line, when you go to the job field, you notice it also defaults to 105 Alamo Cafe. If those two those two fields are not matching when you finish this process, the system is going to scream and shout at you. So just know that in advance. All right, so now we're going to go in and put the work day. That's December 29th is the day we're going to enter for. So I'm going to go in here and put the 29th. We're going to go in here and drop down, pick an employee. These are the employees that match the criteria that's been selected. So the criteria, once again, is that we have a pay period. We also have we have employees that can work this pay period. Obviously, they're active during this time. We also have employees here that meet this pay group criteria, which is the pay group that's listed at the very top of the screen. We also, these employees meet the criteria of being able to work on this particular job. So, real quick, recap, the criteria here that we've told the system is we have a job, and let me get there we go. We have this job. They're active in this pay period, or active at the time. And available in this particular pay group. So that's kind of your 3 criteria as we go through that. All right, so let me go back out of here. All right, so now furthermore, kind of going through this, and one of the questions came up is how do we know which is the correct pay group? So the pay groups are based on the rules that are set up for that particular employees, area, state, union, whatever it may be. In most cases, when you go to this particular screen, you're only going to have one timesheet to pick from. You're not going to have that question or trying to figure that out. But rest assured, if I were to pick, say I had 2 or 3 to pick from, and I picked the wrong one, if I come to the employee screen and I do not find that employee available to be selected from, the system is telling you that you've picked the wrong pay group. Just go back, pick the other timesheet, and proceed on. You'll be able to work that way. Another question, I'll answer that one here momentarily once we get a little further down with this particular screen. So I'm going to pick Edward here. So Edward's the guy I always pick as our examples. And then I'm going to pick the task. These are the tasks that are available on that particular job. I'm going to say he was a custodian that day. Work order, there's a work order. The work orders will be listed here. We'll say he worked to his Windows work order. And our past pay date, pay period, like I said, I don't like the naming of this field. Just use the start date of the pay period, which is 12/27/16 in this particular case. Next, scrolling over, we have rate type. Rate type says you've got all these different rates that are available on the manual timesheet for this example. Pick the one you want. Now, I have a test example here, so I have a lot of rate types available. We're just going to say that we forgot, let's see, what are we talking about? I was looking for back pay, but I don't think I have back pay or on this particular example. But regardless, we'll use regular for right now for this example of Crane 1. Hours, how many hours they work. So in this case, let's say he worked 7 hours. And like I said, rate, leave it alone. You don't have to worry about the rate field. Now, at this point, over the far left-hand side, you have a field that says, a little link that says Save and Cancel. Pick the one you want to use. Obviously, if it cancels, you lose your work. If I hit Save, it's going to actually save my work. Now, one thing Save will do for me, it's going to calculate this line for me. It's also going to pull in that pay rate for that employee. So if you watch to the far right of this window, I click on Save. The far right of the window here, as soon as it updates, what does it say? Work pay date should be, good. There's that perfectly. Hopefully it's going to happen on another example, but it happened a little earlier than I wanted to, but that's fine. Very top of the screen, it says past pay date should be less than the work date. That's just saying that my dates don't match, and that's because I put 16 as my past pay date. So all I'm going to do here, I'm going to go back to that field, change to the 15th because that's where the start of the pay period was. Hit save again, and when I hit save now, it'll tell me manual timesheet entry was successful at the very top of the window, and then you'll see also on the far right here, you'll show you that the pay rates were updated. So my employee here gets $5 an hour based on the employee profile, so it updated saying that this manual timesheet will be for $35 based on that 7 hours worked. Lo and behold, this is just an example, so no one really gets paid at $5 an hour. But $35 is what this employee's line was entered for. So all I did is, again, if I have to go back and create another line, not a big deal. Just go back in here, add new again, and create another line. So add new. All right, so once I add new there, I can either type it in or pick from the calendar the date that I want to use. Pick Edward, or if there's another employee that I missed, I can pick the other employee off the list. And go in, same thing. Let's say he's a supervisor. This guy's actually he was a custodian. Didn't work a work order that day. And we'll use the same options here. So he worked 7 hours there as well. Save, and you should get that same. I did the same thing again. Not getting used to the 2016 yet, so I apologize. Hit save again, and there's your manual timesheet entry added successfully. That is creating a manual timesheet. Very simple process as we go through here. Now there is a comment section on the far right-hand side. If you choose to put a little note or something for yourself, you're more than welcome to use the comments that are available there. So let me go through my questions here. I've got a couple questions. One of the questions says, now that HR has removed vacation, personal, and sick time and made all PTO, everything as PTO, will the rate type options be changed? That is in discussion. So right now, there are still some needs for some union locations to break those up. There are some need for some sites to keep that still separated. So all in all, no decision has been made just yet of how we're going to treat that. So for right now, just use the rate types that are available to you in the system. So as that gets updated, hopefully we get an update soon. I'll let everyone know via our Monday EPAY updates that get sent out. Let's see. So another question. So one of the things that we've met here locally and here at the corporate office is that we are going to eliminate the need to have both back pay and retro pay. So all of them, I believe, if I'm mistaken, I think are going to be going termed into just one big term called retro, and those you'll see those here shortly as will be updated as well as rate types in the system. Unless there's a requirement or a need to physically say back pay on the check or whatnot because of a union agreement or something like that, in that case we'll leave back pay. But like I mentioned, those two are very similar. We're going to put them into basically one big pile, I guess you're going to say, and make those available as retro in the system. All right. So I've created a manual timesheet. I've gone through and entered 2 lines, both for Edward here, our starter custodian, and he's worked the 29th and the 30th. So we shorted him 14 hours, so a total of $70, and this is now done. I'm done as far as a user in the system creating a manual timesheet. I'm done. So the next question becomes is what do I do? What is the next step here? So what am I supposed to do after I've created this manual timesheet? Well, once a manual timesheet is created, you have to now go in there and actually, let me go back up here. You have to go in there and now approve or submit and approve that manual timesheet. So one of the things you want to do is first make sure that the manual timesheet gets submitted and approved, and then we're going to go through and contact corporate and whatnot. We'll go through that here in a little bit. But the first thing is you're going to go in there and make sure that the timesheet is submitted and approved. So to do that, we're going to go back into Blueforce. We're going to go into this payroll module, and we're going to go into what's called the manual payroll summary, and that's what's highlighted there in blue. The very top one is for our regular timesheets. The bottom is for our manual timesheets, and let's list it as manual. Now we're going to go in there. Once we go into the manual payroll summary, we're going to go in and put our search dates for the dates that we enter time for. We're going to click on search, and you're going to notice that when I go in there, I have the ability now to see all the timesheets that were just created. At the very bottom of the screen, it's telling you that I have a pay period of 12/27 through 1/2 that I just created manual timesheets for that particular pay group, and there's one item that's in a submitted state. Actually, I'm sorry, I actually put this out of order, but you go in there and quickly see the timesheets that are available, and actually going to show in an open state. Should be the very first screen. So this screenshot's a little off, but I'll demo this here momentarily. The first thing you'll have the opportunity to do is go in there and submit the timesheets, and then once you submit the timesheets, obviously the approver can go in there and approve his or her timesheets. So as I go through here, let me scroll up just a tad here. Once you go through that particular process, then you're going to actually go through and be sure to contact your corporate payroll contact to let them know that you have a manual timesheet in the queue, and you're going to want to go ahead and send them via email a special paycheck request form for them for their records as well. So that process doesn't change. You're still going to contact them. You're still going to also let them know that you have a special pay as well via that form. Now, one thing I did not include in here, you should do want to also contact and let Christy Duncan know. Christy is on our IT team, and occasionally I think many of you also incorporate myself and Tiandra in those emails as well. We're always going out there also making sure that since the manual timesheet is a separate piece or separate component, we want to make sure that those don't get left behind and lost kind of in the shuffle. So let's go back. Let me go ahead and show you a few more slides, a few more steps in the Blueforce system, where now we're going to go in and actually submit and obviously approve this particular time. So let me go back. So right now I left off, I'm in the manual timesheet view. The next step is going to take us up to the very top of the screen. We're going to actually go into the payroll area. So if I go into the payroll module now in the system, I'll click on payroll. And then like I mentioned on the slide here, you have a payroll summary area, which is for the regular timesheet. That's what's showing right now in this big view. Okay. Don't let that scare you off by no means. But the one we want is actually down here at the bottom, or close to the bottom, called manual payroll summary. So once I have manual payroll summary selected, I'm just going to go ahead and click on it. And when I click on it, it'll now take me down into the screen where I can actually see all of the different timesheets that are available. Now it's going to be blank just like this on the screen when you go into it, and that's because you have to tell it a proper date range. I entered time for back in December, so my date range here is probably going to need some help here. So I'm going to have to go in here and update the date range accordingly. So if I go in here right now and go back into manual payroll summary, go in here and actually put in a date range for the period that I was looking for. Now initially, as I started the example today, I used the 2nd through the 8th as my example. But then I quickly found out that I actually was able to see the other timesheets because even though they started in December, they actually fell in, the end date fell in within this date range. That's why it appeared for me. So regardless, I can come in here and quickly see that I have 2 open timesheets. That's basically saying I have 2 lines of time that's open. So I have 2 lines, one for each day for Edward, still in the system. Now, if I need to, and I don't, I see this, I'm like, I don't know what this 2 means. What is it? I can always click on the number 2. It'll take me into that manual timesheet view, so you can actually review that manual timesheet before you submit it or approve it. Now, the only thing you have to do from this screen is hit the drop down, and you have an option that says Submit All. The minute I click on Submit All, it's going to automatically move those 2 timesheets that are on this line into a submitted state. There is no save. There's no other extra work to do. All I have to do is hit the drop down, click on Submit All. Once again, this is only going to be for the submitter. So if you have a submitter access, you come in here, Submit All, and you will notice that as soon as it updates, your status has now gone from open to submitted. So now, as an approver, and I don't have the access to do it on the screen, but I have access just to see it on this, just to show you what's going to happen. If I go in here now to, as an approver, I can approve all, which will now move my 2 submitted items into an approved state, which basically says it's ready to go for corporate payroll to proceed. Or I can reject the submitted as an approver. So as an approver, I can say, you know what, these 2 were submitted, but they were submitted incorrectly. I'm going to reject them and have the user go back and fix the issue, wherever it may be. Now, one of the things to keep in mind with this, as you go through, is that just like the regular timesheets, if I ever reject anything, the status goes to a status. The status of the timesheets goes to a status of needs changes. I have to go in as a secondary step as an approver to hit the drop down here and select Reopen All, and that basically opens them up. But regardless, if I want to go and approve, I'm done. Corporate payroll can now be contacted. You can also contact the IT EPAY team, and we'll also be on the lookout for these manual timesheets to be processed. So kind of in a big picture, that is the process of approving and submitting. It's not a difficult process, like I mentioned. It's just a different section and a different link within Blueforce. Now, once as I mentioned a while ago, once you're done with that manual timesheet, you want to be sure to contact your corporate payroll contact. Like I said, do it by email. Notify them that you have that manual timesheet in the queue, and especially include Christy Duncan, which is on our IT EPAY team, but also it doesn't hurt to include me, Christian, or Tiandra on this particular email as well. And then send that email. Send an email also, whether it be that same email or a separate email, but send via email the special pay check request form to your payroll contact, so they actually have it as well as a backup, so they know they're not so they have that for their record, really. Now, from that, as I mentioned earlier, if there's no daily reviews happening, you're going to have issues. But if the daily reviews are occurring, as they should be, there should be no reason why a manual timesheet is needing to be created. Also, let's utilize the Blueforce's functionality to help with shift differentials. And there's many cases out there where shift differentials are causing checks to have to be cut after the fact. Holiday exceptions, maybe we forgot to pay a holiday, or we put the improper rate type. So holiday exceptions can help with that. But stuff like that in a system that will help prevent from having to track info manually. And we're finding that if you're not doing the daily reviews, and we're finding also that if you're doing a lot of stuff manually on your end, those are the 2 leading factors to why you're having to do manual timesheets. Obviously, those are the 2 big ones that I can harp on all day, but those are 2 things to take back. So if there's anything we can do from the perspective of setting up additional functionality in the system, whether it be just reaching out to Tiandra and myself and asking the question, can this be done? Let's talk about that, because the more we can have the system do that for us, the least likely we're going to have errors or need to do manual timesheets at the end of the day. So kind of with that, right up at the hour that we scheduled, I want to say obviously thank you for everyone for joining us today on our discussion on manual timesheets. I record the session today for you, so I'll make that available to you later this afternoon. I'll also send you everyone that was participating in today's call, I'll send you a documentation, which is basically the slides. I'm going to go back and correct one or two slides there, but I'll send this off to you as well so you have for your reference. And I'll make that available also on the SharePoint site. That way we have a record of that, have been out there, and you can always refer to it as needed. But as I mentioned, we do have our EPAY Tips and Changes webinars every Tuesday and Thursday, so join us on that. And then check your weekly EPAY updates for upcoming webinars that we'll be having. So next Wednesday, same time, we're going to go and I'm going to present the Blueforce scheduling webinar one more time. So we'll have that again next Wednesday. And I believe the following Wednesday we'll be doing this manual timesheet session one more time as well for your reference. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful remainder of the Wednesday, and we'll hopefully catch you again real soon on another upcoming webinar. Have a good day. Thank you.